I need to tell you this while I still remember who I am. My name is Marcus Webb, I'm 34 years old, and 3 days ago I discovered something that's made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. I have proof, actual, tangible proof, that time looped. Not metaphorically, not like déjà vu, but genuinely repeated itself. And the worst part? I'm starting to think it's happening again. Let me back up. I'm a data analyst for an insurance company in Portland, Oregon. Not exactly thrilling work, but it pays the bills and keeps my mind sharp. I live alone in a small apartment in the Pearl District, the kind of place where you hear your neighbors through the walls but never actually see them. My life is routine, predictable, boring, or at least it was until last Tuesday. That morning started like any other. I woke up at 6:47 a.m., 3 minutes before my alarm, the way I always do. I made coffee, burned my toast slightly, and checked my phone while eating. There was an email from my boss about a meeting at 2 p.m. I remember being annoyed because Tuesday afternoons were usually quiet, and I'd planned to leave early to avoid traffic. The morning passed unremarkably. I took the MAX train downtown, grabbed my usual breakfast sandwich from the cart outside my office building, and settled into my cubicle. Around 10 a.m., my coworker Jennifer stopped by to complain about her weekend date. Around 11:30, the fire alarm went off for exactly 4 minutes, a test, apparently, though no one had warned us. I worked through lunch, reviewing claim files and building spreadsheets. Then came the meeting at 2 p.m. My boss, Richard, was discussing quarterly projections when I noticed something odd. He used a phrase, "Circling back to synergize our touch points," that made me physically cringe. But it wasn't just the corporate jargon that bothered me. It was the strange, nagging feeling that I'd heard him say those exact words before, in that exact tone, with that exact pause before. Touch points. I shook it off as coincidence. Richard always talked like that. The meeting ended at 2:47 p.m. I remember checking my watch specifically because I was calculating whether I could still catch the 3:15 train. On my way out, I passed the break room and saw Tom from accounting dropping his coffee mug. It shattered spectacularly, sending brown liquid across the white tile floor in a pattern that looked almost like a star. "Shit," Tom muttered, staring at the mess. I helped him clean it up, caught the 3:15 train, and went home. Microwaved leftover Chinese food. Watched half of a documentary about deep-sea creatures. Fell asleep around 11 p.m. Nothing unusual. Nothing remarkable. Except when I woke up the next morning, something felt wrong. I opened my eyes at 6:47 a.m., 3 minutes before my alarm. The red numbers on my clock radio seemed to glow brighter than usual, almost accusingly. I had a headache, dull and persistent, sitting right behind my eyes. I stumbled to the kitchen, made coffee, and put bread in the toaster. While waiting, I checked my phone. There was an email from Richard about a meeting at 2 p.m. I stared at the screen, confused. Hadn't we already had that meeting? But no, this email was timestamped for that morning, Wednesday morning. I must have been thinking of a different meeting. Richard scheduled them constantly. I burned my toast slightly, just like always, and headed to work. The MAX train was unusually crowded, which irritated me. The breakfast sandwich cart outside my building had a longer line than normal. Small annoyances, nothing more. I got to my desk around 8:45 and started working. At 10 a.m., Jennifer appeared at my cubicle. "Marcus, oh my God, I have to tell you about my weekend date," she said, launching into a story about a guy who'd taken her to a vegan restaurant and then admitted he was actually more of a level 5 vegan, who didn't eat anything that cast a shadow. I laughed, but something tickled the back of my mind. Hadn't she already told me this story? But no, that was impossible. Her date had been over the weekend. Of course she was telling me about it now. At 11:30, the fire alarm went off. I stood outside with everyone else, shivering in the October cold, watching my coworkers scroll through their phones. The alarm shrieked for exactly 4 minutes before cutting off. When we filed back inside, someone muttered that it had been a test, though no one had warned us. I returned to my desk with that same nagging feeling gnawing at me. The afternoon crawled by. I kept glancing at the clock, increasingly anxious about the 2 p.m. meeting without understanding why. When the time finally came, I walked to the conference room with my stomach in knots. Richard started his presentation. Financial charts. Projected growth. Standard corporate monotony. Then he said it. Now, circling back to synergize our touch points. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, my heart suddenly hammering. That phrase. That exact phrase, with that exact pause. I knew what he was going to say next. Every word. Every inflection. And I was right. The meeting proceeded exactly as I remembered. Same discussions. Same questions from Karen in HR. Same moment when Richard's laser pointer died and he fumbled with the batteries. It all unfolded like a script I'd already read. I sat frozen, unable to speak, terror creeping up my spine. The meeting ended at 2:47 p.m. I checked my watch with trembling hands. Same time as yesterday? But that was impossible. I practically ran from the conference room. My mind raced, trying to find rational explanations. Maybe I was having a stroke. Maybe this was a brain tumor. Maybe I'd fallen asleep during the meeting and dreamed the whole thing. I was passing the break room when I heard it, the sharp crash of ceramic on tile. I stopped walking. Tom from accounting stood in the doorway, staring down at his shattered coffee mug. Brown liquid spread across the white floor in a pattern that looked like a star, the exact same pattern. Shit, Tom muttered. I couldn't breathe. He looked up at me, confused by my expression. You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. I opened my mouth but no words came out. Finally I managed. The mug? Yeah, clumsy me, Tom said with an embarrassed laugh. This is what I get for checking my phone while walking. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked quickly to the elevator. My hands shook as I pressed the button. The ride down to the lobby felt like it took hours. I didn't catch the 3:15 train. I didn't go home. Instead, I walked. Block after block through Portland streets, my mind spiraling. It had to be coincidence. People said the same things all the time. Accidents happened. The human brain was wired to find patterns even where none existed. This was just. But I couldn't convince myself. When I finally got home after dark, I searched through my apartment frantically, looking for something, anything, that might prove I wasn't losing my mind. I found my work notebook and flipped through the pages. There, my notes from Tuesday's meeting. Same topics. Same bullet points. I'd lived that day before. I sat on my couch, hugging my knees, trying not to hyperventilate. What was happening to me? Was this some kind of psychotic break? Had I actually lived Tuesday twice? Or was my brain just malfunctioning? I needed proof. Real, concrete proof. I grabbed a pen and paper and started writing everything I could remember about what had happened yesterday, or the first time I'd lived through this day. Every detail, no matter how small. The documents I'd reviewed. The emails I'd received. The conversations I'd overheard. Then I wrote predictions for Thursday. If this was real, if time really had looped, maybe it would happen again. Maybe I could document it before it happened. I wrote, Jennifer will mention her vegan date at 10 a.m. Fire alarm at 11:30. Richard's meeting at 2 p.m. Laser pointer will die. Tom will drop his mug at 2:50 p.m. I stared at the paper, my handwriting shaky and barely legible. This was insane. I was insane. But I kept the paper, folded it carefully, and put it in my wallet. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that coffee spreading across the floor, forming the same star pattern again and again. When I opened my eyes the next morning, my alarm hadn't gone off yet. I looked at the clock. 6:47 a.m. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. There was an email from Richard, timestamped from that morning. Meeting today at 2 p.m. to discuss quarterly projections. No. No, no, no. I jumped out of bed and ran to my kitchen. With mechanical precision, my hands reached for the coffee maker, for the bread, for the toaster. I stopped myself just before pressing down the lever. This couldn't be happening. I checked my email history, scrolling back frantically. There was the Wednesday email about the meeting. And before that, the Tuesday email about the meeting. Different messages, different timestamps, same subject line. But that made sense, didn't it? Richard could have sent multiple emails about the same meeting. That was normal. People did that all the time. I was grasping at straws and I knew it. I forced myself to go through my morning routine, documenting everything in a new note on my phone. Every action, every thought, every observation. If I was going insane, at least I'd have a record of it. The MAX train was crowded again. The breakfast sandwich line was long again. I got to my desk at 8:45. I pulled out the paper from my wallet and smoothed it on my desk. My predictions. My test. At 10:03 a.m., Jennifer appeared at my cubicle. Before she could speak, I said, "Let me guess. You went on a date with a level 5 vegan who doesn't eat anything that casts a shadow." Her face went pale. "How did Mark tell you?" "Oh my God, I'm going to kill him. I told him not to say anything because it sounded so stupid." "No one told me," I interrupted, my voice hollow. "You're going to tell me the restaurant was called Green Essence and the guy ordered something called a light cleanse bowl?" Jennifer's mouth fell open. "Okay, this is seriously creeping me out. How do you know this?" I couldn't answer. I just stared at her, feeling reality crack further. She backed away slowly, clearly unsettled, and didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. At 11:30 a.m., the fire alarm went off. At 2 p.m., I walked into the conference room like a condemned man. Richard's presentation unfolded exactly as I knew it would. Every word. Every pause. Every slide transition. When his laser pointer died, I watched him fumble with the batteries, my stomach churning with dread. The meeting ended at 2:47 p.m. I stood in the hallway outside the break room, staring at the entrance, waiting. Other people passed me, giving me strange looks. I didn't care. I had to know. At exactly 2:50 p.m., Tom walked out of the break room. He was holding his coffee mug carefully with both hands, watching his step, his phone safely in his pocket. The mug didn't fall. Tom walked right past me, completely fine, and disappeared around the corner. I stood there for a full minute, confused and dizzy with relief. It hadn't happened. The loop was broken. I'd changed something, or the universe had corrected itself, or... Then I heard the crash behind me. I turned slowly. Inside the break room, someone else had dropped their coffee mug. A woman I didn't recognize from another department. The brown liquid spread across the white tile floor in that same star pattern. "Shit," she muttered, staring at the mess. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the floor, my back against the wall, hyperventilating. It didn't matter. The details could change, but the pattern remained. Time wasn't just looping, it was locked. Predetermined. Inevitable. And I was trapped inside it. That's when I started documenting everything. Really documenting it. I went home and created a detailed file on my laptop. Every single thing that had happened all 3 times I'd lived through these days. Timestamps, conversations, events. I printed it out, took photos of it, emailed it to myself with different subject lines. I needed evidence. I needed proof that I wasn't just having delusions. Because the worst possibility was starting to occur to me. What if tomorrow I woke up at 6:47 a.m. again? What if this wasn't a 3-day loop? What if it never ended? That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, typing frantically, trying to record every detail of what was happening to me. If I was going insane, maybe someone would find this and understand. If I wasn't insane, if this was real, then maybe someone would find this and believe me. Around 3 a.m., I had a terrible thought. What if I'd been looping for longer than 3 days? What if I'd lived through this week dozens of times and just didn't remember? What if each loop erased the memory of previous loops, and I was only aware of the last few? How many times had I lived this life without knowing? I wrote that down too, my hands trembling so badly I could barely type. When exhaustion finally overtook me around 5 a.m., I collapsed onto my couch without even closing my laptop. My last conscious thought was a prayer. Please let tomorrow be different. Please let this be over. Please let me wake up on Friday. I opened my eyes. 6:47 a.m. The clock radio's red numbers glowed at me like demon eyes. And I started screaming. I stopped screaming when my neighbor started pounding on the wall. "Shut up in there!" a muffled voice yelled. "Some of us are trying to sleep." I clamped my hand over my mouth, breathing hard through my nose, trying to calm down. The panic attack subsided slowly, leaving me shaking and drenched in cold sweat. I looked around my apartment like I'd never seen it before. Same IKEA furniture. Same beige walls. Same prison. 4 times. I'd lived through the same day 4 times. No, that wasn't quite right. Each day had been slightly different. Wednesday was mostly the same as Tuesday. Thursday had variations, Jennifer's wariness, Tom not dropping the mug, the other woman dropping hers instead. Today, Friday, that was really Tuesday again, would probably have its own changes. But the core remained constant. The meeting. The fire alarm. Something breaking at approximately 2:50 p.m. I was stuck in the pattern even as the details shifted. I needed to understand the rules. I dragged myself off the couch and went to my laptop, which was still open from the night before. My frantic documentation stared back at me, paragraphs of desperate text cataloging my impossible situation. I saved the file with a new name, Loop Day 4, and started a fresh document. This time, I would be scientific about it. Methodical. If I was trapped in some kind of temporal anomaly, I needed to figure out how it worked. Maybe then I could find a way out. I made coffee, deliberately didn't make toast, and sat down with my laptop. First question, what were the fixed points? What absolutely had to happen every loop? I created a list. Fixed points. Wake at 6:47 a.m. Email from Richard about 2 p.m. meeting, timestamp varies but always sent that morning. Fire alarm at 11:30 a.m., lasts 4 minutes. Meeting at 2 p.m., ends at 2:47 p.m. Something breaks around 2:50 p.m. Variables. My actions mostly. Other people's reactions to my actions. Small details and variations. Who drops what where? Second question, could I actually change anything significant? I'd prevented Tom from dropping his mug, but someone else had dropped theirs instead. The universe, or whatever was doing this, seemed to route around my interference. It wanted that specific moment to happen, that specific pattern. Why? I glanced at the clock. 7:23 a.m. I had hours before I needed to leave for work. Hours to test things. What if I didn't go to work at all? The thought sent a thrill of something like hope through me. If I was living the same day repeatedly, maybe I could just not participate. Stay home. Break the pattern entirely. I called my office and left a voicemail saying I was sick. Then I sat back, waiting to see what would happen. Nothing exploded. Reality didn't collapse. I didn't suddenly find myself transported to the office against my will. I just stayed home. The morning passed quietly. Too quietly. I kept expecting something to force me back into the pattern, but nothing did. I made breakfast, watched TV, paced my apartment. Around 10 a.m., I felt a strange pulling sensation, like a fish hook tugging gently at my sternum, but I ignored it. At 11:30 a.m. exactly, my building's fire alarm went off. I stood frozen in my kitchen as the shrill sound filled my apartment. This wasn't a test. We hadn't had a building-wide fire alarm in the 2 years I'd lived here. But there it was, wailing through the halls, forcing me out of my unit and down the stairs with dozens of my neighbors. We stood outside in the October cold. I checked my watch obsessively. The alarm rang for exactly 4 minutes before cutting off. Must have been a test, someone muttered behind me. Back inside, I returned to my apartment with my heart racing. The pattern had found me anyway. It didn't matter that I wasn't at the office. The fire alarm happened at 11:30, for minutes long, regardless. What about the meeting? At 1:45 p.m., my phone rang. Richard. Marcus, where are you? The meeting starts in 15 minutes. I'm sick, I said. I left a voicemail this morning. I didn't get any voicemail. Are you sure you called the right number? He sounded annoyed. Look, this meeting is important. Can you dial in remotely? I'll send you the conference link. I stared at the wall. The pattern was adapting, finding ways to include me even when I tried to escape. I can't, I said. I'm really not feeling well. Richard sighed. Fine. But you'll need to review the recording later. We're making some important decisions about Q4. He hung up. I sat on my couch, waiting for 2:50 p.m. with a feeling of dread I couldn't explain. At exactly 2:50, I heard a crash from the apartment above me. Something shattering. Then a woman's voice, muffled. Shit! I ran to my window and looked out at the alley below. There, on the ground 3 stories down, were the remains of a coffee mug, brown liquid spreading across the concrete in a pattern that looked exactly like a star. My upstairs neighbor appeared at her window, looking down at the mess. How did that ever happen? She said to someone inside her apartment. It just flew right out of my hand. I backed away from the window, my breath coming in short gasps. It didn't matter what I did. The pattern would complete itself. If Tom didn't drop the mug, someone else would. If I wasn't in the office, the mug would find another location, another victim. The universe was determined to make these specific moments happen, and it would bend reality itself to ensure they did. I was a prisoner of time itself. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I documented everything obsessively, taking photos of my computer screen, writing notes by hand, recording voice memos on my phone. I needed evidence. I needed proof that this was happening, that I wasn't just insane. That night, I did something that had been nagging at me since day 3. I went to the convenience store on the corner and bought a lottery ticket. The Powerball drawing was that evening. If time was really looping, and I remembered what happened, I could prove it by predicting the numbers. I watched the drawing at 10 p.m., writing down the numbers as they were announced: 7, 14, 21, 33, 45, Powerball 8. Then I wrote them on a piece of paper, photographed it with my phone, and sent the image to 3 different email addresses with the subject line. I wrote this before the drawing, check timestamps. If I woke up tomorrow and it was the same day again, I would know those numbers. I could buy the winning ticket. That would be undeniable proof. I went to bed with something almost like anticipation. For the first time since this started, I had a plan. I opened my eyes. 6:47 a.m. I should have been terrified, but instead I felt a grim satisfaction. I was right. I grabbed my phone immediately, checking for the emails I'd sent to myself. Nothing. The emails didn't exist. My sent folder showed the last email I'd sent was Monday, before any of this started. I checked my photos. The image of the lottery numbers wasn't there. I checked my notes. The document where I'd written them was gone. Everything reset. Not just time, but data. Information. Evidence. My laptop sat on my desk, and with trembling hands I opened it. All my documentation files. Loop day 4, loop day 3. Everything were gone. The only file that remained was a single document, created yesterday, or today, or whenever, at 7:15 a.m., containing the first few paragraphs of notes I'd written before I'd started the serious documentation. The loop didn't just reset time. It reset everything. Every change I made, every file I created, every photo I took, all of it wiped clean when the day repeated. All except my memory. I was the only thing that persisted. The only glitch in the system. I wanted to scream again, but I was too tired. Instead, I just sat at my laptop and started typing. If the universe was going to erase my proof every time, I'd have to create it fresh each day. I'd have to remember, and document, and try to stay sane while living the same nightmare over and over. But then I remembered something: the lottery numbers. I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote them down from memory: 7, 14, 21, 33, 45, Powerball 8. This was it. This was my proof. If I went to the convenience store right now and bought a ticket with these numbers, and then those numbers were drawn tonight, I'd have undeniable evidence that I'd lived this day before. The timestamp on the ticket would prove I'd bought it before the drawing. And the ticket would still exist tomorrow, or today again, or whenever I woke up next, because it would be a physical object created on the current day, not something carried over from a previous loop. Maybe. I had to try. I got dressed quickly, not bothering with my usual routine, and practically ran to the convenience store. It opened at 7 a.m., and I was waiting outside the door when the tired-looking clerk unlocked it. "Powerball ticket," I said breathlessly. "Quick pick, no, wait. Let me choose the numbers." The clerk handed me a play slip. My hands shook as I filled it in: 7, 14, 21, 33, 45, Powerball 8. The ticket printed out. I stared at it like it was the Holy Grail. There, in black and white, the numbers I'd seen in a future that hadn't happened yet. The timestamp read 7:04 a.m., Pacific Time. "You okay, buddy?" the clerk asked, eyeing me warily. "I'm fine," I said, clutching the ticket. "I'm perfect. This is perfect." I went back to my apartment and carefully placed the ticket on my kitchen table. Then I took my phone and photographed it from every angle, recording video of it, writing down the numbers in my notebook. Not that any of that would survive the loop, but it made me feel better. Then I waited. I didn't go to work. I called in sick again, not caring if Richard got the voicemail or not. I just sat at my kitchen table, staring at that lottery ticket, waiting for 10 p.m. The hours crawled by like centuries. At 11:30, the building fire alarm went off, for minutes exactly. I barely noticed. At 2:50, something crashed in an apartment somewhere in my building. I didn't investigate. All I cared about was that ticket. At 10 p.m., I turned on my TV with the ticket clutched in my sweating hand. The drawing began. The first ball dropped. 7. My heart hammered. 14. "Come on," I whispered. 21. 33. 45. And finally, Powerball 8. I'd done it. I'd won the lottery. More importantly, I'd proven, to myself, at least, that this was real. I had lived this day before. Time was actually looping. I laughed, a sound that was half sob, half hysteria. I had proof. Physical, undeniable proof. But even as I laughed, a darker thought occurred to me: what good was proof if the day would reset again? What good was a winning lottery ticket if I woke up tomorrow and it didn't exist anymore? Unless the ticket would still exist. Unless it would be there when I woke up, because it had been created within the loop's boundaries. If that was true, I could claim the winnings. I could use the money to do what? To escape? To find help? To hire scientists who might understand what was happening to me? It was a thread of hope, thin and fragile, but I clung to it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my table, holding the ticket, watching the clock. As it crept towards 6:47 a.m., I felt that familiar sensation of reality preparing to shift, like the world taking a deep breath before diving underwater. "Please," I whispered to no one. "Please let this be real." The clock struck 6:47. I blinked, and I was in my bed, staring at the ceiling, my alarm about to go off. I bolted upright and ran to the kitchen. The table was empty. The lottery ticket was gone. "No," I said. "No, no, no, and no." I tore through my apartment, searching everywhere, but I knew it was futile. The ticket had been erased along with everything else. The universe's reset was absolute. I sank to the floor, finally understanding the true horror of my situation. It wasn't just that I was trapped in a time loop. It was that I could never prove it. Every piece of evidence I gathered would vanish. Every change I made would be undone. I could live this day 1,000 times, win the lottery 1,000 times, and every morning I'd wake up with nothing but memories that sounded like delusions. I was utterly, completely alone in this nightmare. And no one would ever believe me. That's when I started to break. Day 6, or 7, or maybe 10, I lost count. I decided to push the boundaries. If the universe was determined to make certain things happen, what would it do if I tried to prevent the core events? Really prevent them, not just avoid them? At 11:25 a.m., I went to my building's utility room and yanked the fire alarm system offline, disabling it completely. When 11:30 came, silence. The alarm didn't sound. I felt a moment of triumph, followed immediately by unease. The building was too quiet, too still. Something felt wrong. At 11:32, someone in the apartment below me started screaming. "Fire! Fire!" I ran to my window. Smoke was billowing from the lower floors. Within minutes, everyone was evacuating anyway. Sirens were approaching, firefighters were rushing into the building. The evacuation lasted exactly 4 minutes before the all-clear was given. A small kitchen fire, quickly contained, no real damage. But we'd still evacuated at 11:30. We'd still stood outside for 4 minutes. The pattern had found another way. I tried everything over the next several loops. I unplugged my alarm clock, but I still woke up at 6:47. I threw my phone out the window, but Richard called my landline instead. I barricaded myself in my apartment, but a gas leak forced everyone to evacuate at exactly the right time. The universe was running a script, and it would not deviate from that script no matter what I did. On what might have been day 15, I started seeing them. The glitches. I was walking through my apartment when I noticed it. A coffee mug sitting on my counter flickered. Just for a split second, it was there, then it wasn't, then it was again. I stopped and stared at it, wondering if I'd imagined it. Then I saw it again. My couch cushion momentarily appeared to be sitting at a slightly different angle, then snapped back to its original position. Reality was stuttering. I started watching for these glitches obsessively. They happened more frequently as the day progressed, always small things. A book on my shelf would briefly show a different title. The time on my microwave clock would jump backward a second before continuing forward. Shadows would shift slightly without the light source moving. It was like watching a video game struggle to render a scene properly, or a streaming movie buffering and repeating frames. The simulation, because that's what I was starting to think this was, a simulation, was showing cracks. At the office, the glitches became more obvious. I saw Jennifer walk past my cubicle, then watched her walk past again 2 seconds later, wearing a slightly different expression. During Richard's meeting, his laser pointer died, then briefly worked again for one slide before dying again, as if reality couldn't decide which version of events to show me. The woman in the break room dropped her mug at 2:50, but for just a moment, less than a heartbeat, I saw Tom standing in her place, the mug shattering in his hands instead, before reality corrected itself and showed me the woman again. These weren't déjà vu moments. These were actual visual glitches in the fabric of reality itself. And I started to wonder, was I seeing these because I'd lived through so many loops? Was my consciousness somehow out of sync with the simulation, allowing me to see behind the curtain? Or was the simulation breaking down because I was breaking it? That night, I documented the glitches in excruciating detail, even though I knew the documentation would vanish. I needed to see it written out, needed to convince myself I wasn't just hallucinating from sleep deprivation and stress. Because by this point, I was barely sleeping. What was the point? I'd just wake up at the same time anyway. I'd started spending my nights walking through Portland streets, watching for glitches, trying to find other people who might be aware of the loop. I never found anyone. Everyone else was blissfully ignorant, living their scripted day over and over without any memory of the repetition. I was completely alone. On day 20-something, I met her. I was in Powell's Books at 9 p.m., one of the few places in Portland still open late, wandering the aisles in a daze. I'd taken to going there during my endless nights because it was comforting, surrounded by books, by stories, by the reminder that other people had imaginations too, that reality wasn't supposed to be this rigid and unchanging. I was in the science fiction section, because of course I was, when I noticed a woman standing at the end of the aisle. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater. She was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen on anyone else's face during any loop. Recognition. "You feel it too," she said. It wasn't a question. I froze. "What?" "The loop. You're aware of it." She stepped closer, her eyes intense, almost desperate. "How many times have you lived today?" My heart stopped. You know? "I've lived today 37 times," she said. "Or maybe more. I stopped counting after 37. When did it start for you?" I couldn't speak. I actually couldn't form words. After all this time, after all these loops of being completely alone with my nightmare, here was someone else who understood. Someone else who was aware. "I'm Sarah," she said. "And we need to talk. Right now. We don't have much time." "Time?" I managed to croak. "We have all the time in the world. The day just repeats." "No," she interrupted, her face grave. "That's what I thought too at first. But I've been paying attention. The glitches are getting worse, aren't they? Reality stuttering more frequently? That's not a good sign, Marcus." "How do you know my name?" I asked. "I've lived this day 37 times. I've learned a lot about you." She pulled me toward a secluded corner of the store, checking over her shoulder like we were being watched. "Listen to me carefully. This isn't just a time loop. This is something much worse. The world isn't repeating, it's trying to stabilize. It's trying to fix something that broke. And the reason we're aware of it, the reason we remember, is because we're somehow connected to whatever broke." "I don't understand," I said, though dread was pooling in my stomach. "On the original Tuesday, the real Tuesday, before any of this started, something happened. Something catastrophic. The world ended, Marcus. Or it was supposed to. But somehow, reality created this loop to prevent it, to buy time to find another outcome. We're living in the universe's save file, being replayed over and over while it searches for a solution." I stared at her. "That's impossible." "Is it?" She grabbed my arm. "Think about the fixed points. The meeting at 2 p.m. The fire alarm. The thing that breaks at 2:50. Those aren't random. They're important. They're connected to whatever is supposed to happen. And if we can figure out what they mean, maybe we can break the loop." "How do you know all this?" I demanded. "Because I've been looking for answers instead of just documenting what happens. I've been testing the boundaries, following the patterns and—" She stopped abruptly, her face going pale. "What? What is it?" She was staring past me, at something over my shoulder. I turned to look. The bookstore had frozen. Every person except us was completely still, locked in mid-motion. A customer reaching for a book. A barista pouring coffee at the cafe. An employee pushing a cart of returns. All frozen like statues, like someone had pressed pause on reality itself. "Oh God," Sarah whispered. "It's found us." "What's found us?" Before she could answer, the glitches started. Massive ones. Books on shelves flickered in and out of existence. The walls rippled like water. The frozen people began to stutter, their positions shifting slightly with each stutter, reaching for a book, not reaching, reaching again, reaching for a different book, all in rapid succession. "We need to go," Sarah said urgently. "Now. This place isn't safe when it does this." "When what does this? What's happening?" "The simulation is collapsing around us because we're both here, both aware. We're anomalies. Errors in the code. And it's trying to correct us." She pulled me toward the exit, but the door was flickering too, sometimes there, sometimes showing just a brick wall, sometimes opening onto my apartment instead of the street. "This is impossible," I said again, stupidly. "Stop saying that," Sarah snapped. "Nothing is impossible. We're living proof. Now come on, we have to." She stopped mid-sentence. I looked at her. She was frozen too, her mouth still open mid-word, her hand still gripping my arm. "Sarah?" I said. "Sarah?" Then I felt it, that familiar sensation of reality preparing to reset. That underwater feeling, that sense of the world taking a breath. "No," I said. "No, not yet. I just found her. The world blinked. I was in my bed, staring at my ceiling, my alarm about to go off. 6:47 a.m. I was alone again. I didn't waste a second. The moment I was fully conscious, I was out of bed and getting dressed. Sarah was real. She existed. She was aware of the loop just like me. And if I'd met her once, I could find her again. The problem was, I had no idea who she was. Where she lived, where she worked, her last name, nothing. All I knew was that she'd be at Powell's Books at 9 p.m. That was 13 hours away, and I didn't know if I could wait that long. But I had to be smart about this. For all I knew, the universe would adapt around my attempts to find her early, the way it adapted around everything else I tried. I needed to understand the rules of engagement first. I spent the morning documenting everything I remembered about Sarah. Dark hair, messy bun, oversized sweater, jeans. Early 30s. She'd said she'd lived the day 37 times. She knew my name. She understood what was happening in a way I didn't. And she'd said something that kept echoing in my mind. "The world ended, Marcus. Or it was supposed to." What did that mean? What catastrophic event could have been prevented by trapping reality in a time loop? And more importantly, how were Sarah and I connected to it? I went to work because I needed to follow the pattern, at least for now. I couldn't risk doing something that would prevent me from meeting Sarah again. The universe had already proven it would reset if I pushed too hard against the boundaries. Jennifer appeared at 10 a.m. with her vegan date story. I smiled and nodded, barely listening. My mind was racing through possibilities. Where would Sarah be right now? What was her routine on this day? At 11:30, the fire alarm went off. 4 minutes of standing outside. I scanned the crowd of my coworkers, looking for dark hair and an over sweater, but Sarah wasn't there. She didn't work at my company. During Richard's meeting at 2 p.m., I found myself staring at the window, watching the city beyond. Portland had about 650,000 people. Sarah could be anywhere, doing anything. And I had no way to find her except to wait until 9 p.m. Unless she'd said she'd been investigating, testing boundaries, following patterns. She'd spent 37 loops learning about me. That meant she'd been watching me, studying my routine. She knew where I worked, where I lived, probably where I went during my endless nights. If she'd been following me, maybe I could follow the pattern backward. Maybe there were places she'd been watching from, places she frequented. At 2:47, the meeting ended. At 2:50, someone dropped something somewhere. I heard the distant crash but didn't investigate. The pattern didn't matter anymore. Sarah mattered. I left work early, taking the MAX train back toward downtown. Powell's Books occupied a full city block, a massive independent bookstore that tourists and locals alike frequented. If Sarah had been there at 9 p.m. in one loop, maybe she'd been there at other times too. Maybe she spent her days there, researching, investigating, trying to understand the loop. I arrived at Powell's at 4 p.m. and started searching. Floor by floor, section by section, looking for a woman with dark hair and an oversized sweater. The store was crowded, and I got lost twice in the maze of rooms and staircases. Powell's was famously labyrinthine, color-coded rooms spreading across multiple floors, a million books creating countless hiding places. I didn't find her. By 7 p.m., I'd searched the entire store 3 times. Either Sarah wasn't there, or she was deliberately avoiding me. I couldn't tell which was worse. I grabbed coffee from the in-store cafe and found a seat where I could watch the entrance. If she came at 9 p.m. like before, I'd see her arrive. And this time, I'd be ready. This time, I wouldn't let reality reset before I got real answers. The hours crawled by. I watched hundreds of people come and go. Couples browsing travel books. Parents with children in the children's section. Students looking for textbooks. Elderly people reading newspapers in the periodicals room. No Sarah. At 8:45, I started to panic. What if she didn't come? What if the loop changed because I'd acted differently? What if by coming here early, waiting for her, I'd somehow prevented our meeting? At 8:52, I saw her. She came through the main entrance, wearing the same outfit I remembered: jeans, oversized sweater, hair in a messy bun. She moved with purpose, heading directly for the science fiction section without browsing or hesitating. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding. She stopped in the same aisle where we met before, but this time she didn't look at me. She pulled a book from the shelf. I couldn't see the title, and opened it, reading intently. But there was something wrong with the way she was reading. Her eyes weren't moving across the page. She was just staring. Waiting. I approached slowly. "Sarah?" She turned, and her expression was completely different from before. Not recognition. Suspicion. "Do I know you?" she asked carefully. My stomach dropped. "We met. Last loop. Right here. You told me about the simulation, about reality trying to stabilize. I've never seen you before in my life," she said, taking a step back. "No, you have. You knew my name. You said you'd lived today 37 times. You said..." I stopped, realization hitting me like a truck. "You don't remember." "Remember what?" She was looking around now, clearly uncomfortable, probably planning an escape route. "The last loop. When we met. When we talked." I ran my hand through my hair, trying to think. "You said the glitches are getting worse. You said reality is trying to correct us because we're anomalies." "Stop," she said firmly. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know how you know my name, but I'm leaving." She moved to walk past me, but I grabbed her arm, gently, but desperately. "Please, just listen. You're aware of the loop, right? You know we're living the same day over and over?" She went very still. "How do you know about that?" "Because I'm aware too. I've been trapped for, I don't even know how many loops anymore. 20? 30? And last time, we met right here. You told me things. Important things. But now you don't remember, which means..." The implication crystallized in my mind. "Which means your memory resets too. You're only aware within each individual loop, but you don't remember previous loops. I'm the only one who carries memories forward." Sarah stared at me, her face pale. "That's not possible. I remember. I remember waking up and knowing that something was wrong. Knowing that I'd lived this day before. But the details are fuzzy. I don't remember specific previous loops, I just have this feeling." "How many times do you think you've lived today?" I asked. "I don't know. It feels like it's been happening forever, but I can only clearly remember today. This version of today." She looked at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "You remember previous loops? Actually remember them?" "Every single one," I said. "Every variation, every change, every glitch. I'm trapped in this nightmare, and I thought I was alone until I met you. But if your memory resets each loop while mine doesn't, then you're different from me somehow," she finished. "More aware. Or more connected to whatever's causing this." We stood there in the aisle, other customers flowing around us, reality blissfully normal for everyone except us. "Tell me what I said last time," Sarah said urgently. "What did I tell you?" I recounted everything I could remember. The world ending. Reality creating a loop to find another outcome. The fixed points being important. The simulation collapsing when we were both together. Sarah listened with growing concern. "If I said that, I must have been further along in my research." I must have figured something out that I haven't figured out yet this time. She grabbed my arm. Come on. I need to show you something. Wait, where are we going? My apartment. I've been documenting everything I can about the loop. If what you're saying is true, if I had more information last time, maybe I wrote it down. Maybe there's evidence I left for myself. We hurried out of Powell's into the cool Portland night. Sarah led me through downtown streets, walking fast, checking over her shoulder periodically. I couldn't tell if she was looking for something following us or just paranoid. After living through loops, paranoia seemed reasonable. Her apartment was in the Alphabet District, a small studio on the third floor of an old building. The moment she unlocked the door, I understood why she'd brought me here. Every wall was covered in papers. Notes, diagrams, photographs, newspaper clippings, printouts, all connected by red string like a detective's conspiracy board. It looked like the room of someone losing their mind, except I knew it was the room of someone desperately trying to stay sane while reality fell apart. Jesus, I whispered. I started documenting on loop 3, Sarah said, moving to one of the walls. Every loop, I wake up and all of this is still here. It persists through the resets. I don't know why, maybe because it's in my apartment, my personal space, and the universe allows it. Or maybe because I'm an anomaly like you said, and my space exists slightly outside the normal rules. My documentation never persists, I said, moving closer to examine the walls. Everything I write disappears when the day resets. Because you're different. More aware, more connected. The universe is paying more attention to you. She pulled down a notebook, flipping through pages. I've been trying to map the fixed points, find the pattern. Look, the meeting at 2 p.m. I found 17 other people who are also in meetings at exactly 2 p.m. Different locations, different companies, but all at the exact same time. She showed me a list of names and locations. I recognized none of them. The fire alarm at 11:30. She continued, moving to another section of the wall. It's not just your building and my office. There are fire alarms, evacuations, or emergency drills happening all over Portland at 11:30. I've documented at least 30 separate incidents. I stared at the map she'd created, pins marking locations across the city. She was right, they formed a pattern. Clustered in downtown Portland, spreading outward like ripples. And the breaking at 2:50, I said slowly. That happens everywhere too, doesn't it? Everywhere. Sarah pulled down another sheet, this one covered in incident reports she'd somehow collected. Dropped mugs, shattered windows, broken equipment, car accidents, all at 2:50 p.m., all within a 5-mile radius of downtown. The pattern was enormous. It wasn't just my day repeating. It was the entire city's day, maybe more, all locked in the same loop, all heading toward the same fixed points. So what happens after 2:50? I asked. What's the pattern leading to? Sarah's face went grim. That's what I haven't figured out yet. The day ends, we reset, and I start over. But there has to be something. Some event that was supposed to happen, some catastrophe that the loop is preventing. I moved closer to her conspiracy board, studying the connections. My eyes caught on a newspaper clipping, partially hidden behind other papers. I pulled it free. It was from the Portland Tribune, dated October 22nd, the day of the loop. The headline read, "Downtown Portland evacuated for suspicious package." What is this? I asked. Sarah came to look over my shoulder. I found that in the newspaper archives online. It's from the real October 22nd, before the loops started. There was a bomb threat downtown. They evacuated several blocks, shut down the MAX trains, the whole 9 yards. Was it real? Was there actually a bomb? I don't know. The articles are vague. They say the package was neutralized and found to be non-threatening, but there's no detail. And here's the weird part. I can't find any follow-up articles. No arrests, no explanation of what the package actually was. It's like the story just ended. I felt cold spreading through my chest. What time was the evacuation? Sarah checked her notes. Started around 2:45 p.m. The package was found at. She stopped, her eyes widening. At 2:50 p.m. The exact time something always breaks. We stared at each other. It's connected, I said. The bomb threat, the evacuation, the fixed points, they're all connected to whatever really happened on October 22nd. Or what was supposed to happen, Sarah corrected. Maybe the bomb was real. Maybe it was supposed to go off at 2:50 p.m. Maybe it did go off, and the loop was created to prevent it, and we're living in the correction attempt. But that doesn't explain why we're aware. Why us? What makes us special? Sarah was quiet for a moment, staring at her wall of research. Then she said very quietly, "Where were you at 2:50 p.m. on the original October 22nd? Before you started remembering the loops?" I tried to think back. It felt like a lifetime ago, even though it had only been, a few weeks. A few loops? I was leaving the office, walking past the break room. Tom dropped his mug, and I was in Powell's books, Sarah said. Downtown. Right in the evacuation zone. She turned to look at me. Marcus, what if we were both supposed to die? What if the bomb, or whatever really happened, was supposed to kill us, along with a bunch of other people? What if the universe created this loop to save us, and the reason we're aware is because we're the focal points? The people it's trying to save? The theory made a terrible kind of sense. But something about it felt wrong. If that's true, I said slowly, then why are we the only ones who remember? If the universe is trying to save people, wouldn't everyone in the blast zone be aware? Maybe they are, Sarah said. Maybe there are dozens of us, all living in our own version of awareness. Maybe you and I just happened to find each other. Or maybe it's something else, I said, my eyes catching on another clipping. This one showed a photograph of a building downtown, the Cascade Building, a glass office tower in the heart of the city. What's this? That's where the suspicious package was found. 10th floor. I pulled the clipping down, studying it closely. The building looked familiar, but I couldn't place why. Then I saw the caption beneath the photo. Cascade Building, home to multiple tech companies including Kronos Technologies. Kronos Technologies, I read aloud. What's that? Sarah pulled up her laptop, which was sitting on her cluttered desk. Tech startup. They've been around for about 5 years. They do, let me see. Advanced research in temporal mechanics and quantum computing. She looked up at me. Temporal mechanics. Time research. We stared at each other as the implications sank in. It's not a bomb, I said. It was never a bomb. It was an experiment. Something Kronos Technologies was working on, something involving time, and it went wrong. And now we're trapped in the aftermath, Sarah finished. Living in a temporal loop created by their accident. I pulled out my phone and Googled Kronos Technologies. Their website was sparse, professional, giving almost no detail about what they actually did. Lots of buzzwords. Breakthrough research, revolutionary applications, the future of computing, but nothing concrete. We need to get into that building, I said. We need to see what they were working on. Sarah shook her head. I've tried. It's locked down tight. Security badges required, cameras everywhere. I couldn't get past the lobby. Then we break in. Marcus, think about it. We're in a time loop. Even if we get caught, even if we get arrested, it doesn't matter. The day resets. There are no consequences. We can do whatever we want, and tomorrow, or today again, we start over clean. I could see her considering it, weighing the risks against the potential reward. When do we go? She finally asked. Tonight. Right now. We have. I checked my watch. 9 hours until the reset. That's plenty of time to get in, look around, and get out. Sarah started gathering supplies, a backpack, a flashlight, tools that might help with breaking and entering. As she worked, I studied her conspiracy board more closely. She documented so much more than I had. While I'd been drowning in despair and isolation, she'd been investigating, researching, building a map of the loop's architecture. The difference was that she got to keep her research between loops while I lost everything. "Sarah," I said, "last time we met, right before the reset, you said reality was collapsing around us because we were both aware. The bookstore froze, the glitches got massive. What if that happens again?" She looked up from her packing. "Then we'll deal with it. But Marcus, if what I said was true, if the simulation breaks down when we're together, maybe that's our way out. Maybe we need to push it to breaking point. Make the system crash completely. That sounds dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. We're living in a broken timeline. For all we know, staying in the loop is more dangerous than trying to break it." She shouldered her backpack. "Come on. Let's go find out what Kronos Technologies did to break reality." We left her apartment and headed downtown. The MAX train was nearly empty at this hour, just a few late-night commuters and people heading home from bars. I watched the city slide past the windows, familiar streets made strange by repetition. "Marcus," Sarah said quietly, "if we do break out of the loop, what happens? Do we go back to the original October 22nd? Do we jump forward to whatever date it actually is now? Or does time just continue from here?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I've been so focused on surviving the loop, I haven't thought much about what comes after." "I think about it constantly," she said. "Every loop, I wonder if this is the time I'll figure it out. The time I'll break free. And then I wake up at the beginning again, and all my memories of previous loops are gone, and I have to start over." She looked at me. "You're lucky, you know. Your memories persist. You can learn, adapt, carry knowledge forward. I'm stuck relearning the same lessons every single day." I hadn't thought of it that way. My persistent memory felt like a curse, but to Sarah it was a gift. We were experiencing the same nightmare from opposite angles. The MAX reached our stop downtown. We got off and walked toward the Cascade building, staying in shadows, avoiding the late-night crowds on the main streets. Portland's downtown was never truly deserted, but at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday it was quiet enough for our purposes. The Cascade building loomed above us, 30 floors of glass and steel reflecting the city lights. The lobby was dark, but I could see security desk inside, and the faint glow of a computer screen suggesting someone was on duty. "Service entrance," Sarah whispered, leading me around the side of the building. We found a door marked "Authorized personnel only." Sarah pulled out a small toolkit and went to work on the lock. I kept watch, my heart pounding, expecting at any moment to hear sirens or shouting. The lock clicked. The door opened. We were in. Inside was a concrete stairwell, dimly lit by emergency lights. We could hear the hum of building systems, the distant rumble of ventilation. Sarah closed the door carefully behind us. "10th floor," she whispered. "That's where the package was found. That's where Kronos Technologies is located." We started climbing. Our footsteps echoed in the stairwell despite our attempts to move quietly. Each floor felt like it took forever. By the time we reached the 10th floor door, I was breathing hard and sweating despite the cool air. Sarah tried the door. Locked, but this time with a card reader. "Can you pick that?" I asked. "No. It's electronic." She pulled out her phone, thinking. "But if we can get into the building's network, maybe we can override it. Or we could try another floor, see if we can find an unlocked door and take the elevator down." Before I could respond, we heard it, footsteps on the stairs above us. Heavy, steady, descending. Security. We looked at each other in panic. If we were caught now, we'd be thrown out or arrested, and we'd wake up tomorrow with no evidence, no answers, having wasted an entire loop. Unless... "Wait here," I whispered to Sarah. Then, before she could stop me, I opened the stairwell door and stepped out into the 10th floor hallway. Alarms immediately started shrieking. Lights flashed. I'd triggered some kind of security system just by opening the door. Behind me, I heard Sarah curse. But I also heard the footsteps in the stairwell change direction, heading down toward us instead of up. The security guard had heard the alarm. I ran down the hallway, ignoring the alarm, looking for Kronos Technologies. The doors all had frosted glass with company names etched into them. Law firms, consulting companies, a dentist's office. There. Suite 1047. Kronos Technologies. I tried the handle. Locked, of course. But next to the door was a large window, the glass frosted but not reinforced. I looked around for something heavy, spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall, and grabbed it. "Sorry about this," I muttered, and swung it at the window. The glass exploded inward with a crash that was somehow louder than the alarm. I knocked out the remaining shards with the extinguisher and climbed through, cutting my hand on a piece I'd missed. Blood dripped onto the office carpet. Inside was a typical modern office space. Open floor plan, a few private offices along the walls, desks with computers, a kitchen area. Nothing that screamed dangerous temporal experiments. But in the back corner was a door marked Lab, authorized personnel only. I ran for it, leaving bloody footprints. Behind me, I could hear shouting. The security guard had reached the 10th floor. I had maybe 30 seconds. The lab door was locked with another card reader. I looked around frantically for something to break it down with, but it looked reinforced. No windows to smash. Then I noticed something strange. The card reader's display was flickering. Not regularly, but stuttering, like the glitches I'd been seeing. The number on the display kept changing. 10:34 p.m., 10:33 p.m., 10:34 p.m., 10:32 p.m., jumping backward and forward randomly. Time was unstable here. I reached out and touched the card reader. The moment my fingers made contact, the flickering intensified. The door's lock clicked, disengaged. The display showed 2:50 p.m. for just a moment before going dark. The door swung open. Inside was darkness. I fumbled for a light switch, found it, and froze. The lab wasn't large, maybe 20 feet by 30 feet, but it was packed with equipment I didn't recognize. Machines with blinking displays showing numbers and graphs I couldn't interpret. Cables running everywhere. And in the center of the room, on a raised platform, was something that looked like a cross between a particle accelerator and a giant gyroscope. A machine for manipulating time. But what made me stop breathing wasn't the machine itself. It was what was displayed on the monitor surrounding it. Video feeds. Dozens of them. All showing the same scene from different angles. Downtown Portland, October 22nd, 2:50 p.m. And in every feed I could see myself. Walking past a break room. Tom dropping a mug. The same moment, captured from security cameras, traffic cameras, phone cameras, angles I'd never seen before. They'd been watching me. Recording me. This whole time. "What the hell?" I whispered. Behind me, I heard Sarah's voice. "Marcus, look at this." She'd entered the lab behind me, having apparently evaded or lost the security guard. She was pointing at a whiteboard on the wall, covered in equations and diagrams. But at the top, written in red marker, was a simple statement. Subject Marcus Webb. Status, anchor point. Loop iteration 47. Stability, 23% and decreasing. 47 loops. I'd lived this day 47 times. And I was the anchor point. The center of the loop. The reason it was happening. This wasn't happening to me. This was happening because of me. I couldn't move. Couldn't think. The words on the whiteboard seemed to pulse with each beat of my racing heart. Anchor point. "Marcus, what does this mean?" Sarah asked, but her voice sounded distant, like she was speaking from the end of a long tunnel. I forced myself to look away from the whiteboard and scan the rest of the lab. There were more whiteboards, more notes, filing cabinets with drawers hanging open as if someone had left in a hurry. On one desk sat a thick binder labeled Project Ouroboros, Temporal Stabilization Protocol. I grabbed it with shaking hands and flipped it open. The first page was a project overview, dense with technical jargon, but certain phrases jumped out at me. manipulate localized temporal fields, create stable causality loop, prevent catastrophic timeline collapse, requires human consciousness as anchor point. Sarah, I said, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. They did this on purpose. The loop isn't an accident. It's intentional. She came to stand beside me, reading over my shoulder. Her face went pale as she processed the implications. I flipped through more pages, finding technical specifications, test results, safety protocols. And then I found a section labeled Anchor Point Selection Criteria. My hands trembled as I read. The anchor point must be an individual present at the moment of temporal intervention who meets the following criteria. 1. No significant personal connections that would create paradox complications. 2. Routine daily schedule with minimal variance. 3. Geographic stability within the target area. 4. Psychological resilience profile indicating capacity to withstand repeated temporal exposure. The list went on, but I'd stopped reading. They'd chosen me. Kronos Technologies had specifically selected me to be the center of their temporal loop because I was ordinary, unremarkable, alone. Because my life was so predictable and empty that I made a good anchor. Keep reading, Sarah urged, though I could hear the fear in her voice. I forced myself to continue. The next section detailed the selection process. They'd apparently screened hundreds of Portland residents, analyzing their routines through public records, surveillance, social media, building profiles, finding the perfect candidate for their experiment. And they'd chosen me. October 22nd, 2:50 p.m. I read aloud from the next page. Temporal intervention deployed. Subject web successfully anchored. Initial loop stability, 94%. Expected degradation rate, 2% per iteration. Estimated maximum iterations before catastrophic failure, 47. I looked up at Sarah. We're on loop 47. This was always going to happen. The loop was always going to break down eventually. What happens when it fails? Sarah asked. What's catastrophic failure? I didn't want to know, but I kept reading anyway. The technical language became more urgent in the later entries, notes scrawled hastily in margins. Loop 15, stability at 76%. Glitches beginning to manifest. Recommend abort protocols. Loop 22, stability at 61%. Subject experiencing memory retention. This was not anticipated. Loop 31, stability at 41%. Recommend immediate termination of experiment. Loop 38, stability at 29%. Multiple reality fractures observed. Timeline integrity compromised. The final entry was dated yesterday, or today, or whenever. Loop 46. Stability at 24%. Catastrophic failure imminent. Subject web's persistent consciousness has created unforeseen complications. His awareness is destabilizing the loop matrix. Secondary awareness detected. Subject Sarah Chin. System cannot maintain coherence with multiple aware participants. Recommend emergency shutdown, but team unable to access lab due to temporal distortions. God help us all if this thing collapses. I set the binder down carefully, afraid I might throw it across the room otherwise. They did this to me, I said quietly. They trapped me in hell because I was convenient. Because I was lonely and boring and predictable. Marcus. And now it's all falling apart, and they don't even know how to stop it. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. We're living in a failed experiment. A broken machine that's grinding itself to pieces, and we're stuck inside it. Sarah grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. Then we find the emergency shutdown they mentioned. We end this ourselves. You don't understand. I'm the anchor point. I'm the center of the loop. If we shut it down, if we break it, I don't know what happens to me. Maybe I cease to exist. Maybe I'm erased from reality entirely. Maybe you finally get to live a life that moves forward. Sarah interrupted. Maybe we both do. Yes, it's scary. Yes, there are unknowns. But Marcus, we're at loop 47. We have one, maybe 2 more loops before this whole thing implodes. Do you really want to just wait for that to happen? She was right. I knew she was right. But the fear was overwhelming. I'd been trapped for so long, desperately trying to escape. But now that I understood what I was, the anchor point, the linchpin holding this broken reality together, I was terrified of what would happen if I pulled myself free. Help me find the shutdown protocols, Sarah said, already moving toward the filing cabinets. There has to be something in here. Some kind of kill switch or emergency procedure. We tore through the lab, searching frantically. The security guard would find us eventually, or the loop would reset, but we had to find answers first. Had to find a way out. I pulled open drawers, scattering papers. Technical manuals, test results, employee directories. And then, at the bottom of one drawer, I found a red folder labeled Emergency Temporal Shutdown Procedure, Eyes Only. Sarah, I found it. She rushed over as I opened the folder. Inside was a step-by-step protocol for terminating the temporal loop. It was highly technical, full of warnings and cautions, but the basic procedure was clear enough. 1. Access the primary temporal manipulation device, the machine in the center of the lab. 2. Enter administrative override codes. 3. Initialize graceful shutdown sequence. 4. Anchor point must willingly release their connection to the loop matrix. 5. Once disconnected, the loop will collapse and normal temporal flow will resume. Step 4. I said, pointing. I have to willingly release my connection. How do I do that? Sarah read further into the procedure. It says you need to interface directly with the machine. There's some kind of neural connection port. You basically have to tell the machine to let you go. That sounds incredibly safe and not at all horrifying. I muttered. Marcus, look at step 5. Sarah's voice had gone very quiet. Look at what happens after the loop collapses. I read the final section. Upon loop collapse, temporal flow will resume from the moment of initial intervention. All events that occurred within the loop will be retroactively erased from the primary timeline. Only the anchor point will retain memories of the loop iterations, as their consciousness exists partially outside normal space-time. Warning: psychological trauma is likely. Post-loop counseling is mandatory. Everything that happened in the loops will be erased. I said slowly. Including us meeting. You won't remember any of this. Sarah's face fell as she understood. When the loop collapses, I'll just be whoever I was before this started. I won't remember the loops. I won't remember investigating, or meeting you, or any of it. Only I'll remember. I said. I'll be the only one who knows this ever happened. We stood there in the lab, surrounded by the evidence of the experiment that had stolen our lives, understanding what escape would cost. You'll still be you, I said. Just not the version of you that lived through this. You'll be the Sarah who existed on the original October 22nd, before Chronos Technologies broke reality. And you'll remember a version of me that doesn't exist anymore, Sarah said softly. You'll remember someone I won't even know I became. The cruelty of it was staggering. We'd found each other in this nightmare, two people aware in a world of sleepwalkers, and escaping meant losing each other. I'd carried the memory of Sarah the investigator, Sarah who understood, Sarah who believed me, but the real Sarah would be a stranger. We don't have a choice, Sarah said, though I could see tears in her eyes. If we stay in the loop, it collapses anyway. At least this way, we choose how it ends. I could choose not to shut it down, I said desperately. I could just let it run. Maybe it stabilizes again. Maybe. It's at 23% stability and dropping, Sarah said firmly. Marcus, this thing is going to fail whether we want it to or not. The only question is whether we control the failure or let it control us. A loud crash from outside the lab made us both jump. The security guard had found us, or backup had arrived. We were out of time. We need to do this now, Sarah said. Show me how to work the machine. Walk me through the shutdown procedure. You can't do it. It has to be me. I'm the anchor point. Then I'll help you. Come on. We rushed to the machine in the center of the lab. Up close, it was even more intimidating, a massive construction of metal and circuitry, pulsing with a faint blue light that seemed to come from within it rather than from any external source. At its base was a control panel with a screen and keyboard, and next to that was something that looked disturbingly like a dentist's chair with a helmet attachment. That must be the neural interface, I said, my mouth dry. Sarah was already at the control panel, following the shutdown procedure. Step 1. Administrative override. There's a code in the folder. Read it to me. I fumbled with the red folder, finding the code sequence. Sarah typed it in, and the machine's hum changed pitch, becoming deeper and somehow more ominous. Step 2. Initialize graceful shutdown sequence. Sarah read. She pressed a series of buttons according to the procedure. The blue light inside the machine began pulsing faster. Okay, it's ready. Step 3 says you need to interface with the machine within 60 seconds, or the shutdown will abort. What happens during the interface? I asked, staring at the chair with dread. It doesn't say. Just that you need to. Sarah consulted the folder. You need to release your consciousness from the temporal matrix and accept forward-moving causality, which is incredibly vague and not at all helpful. Behind us, someone was pounding on the lab door. Portland Police. Open the door. Now or never, Sarah said, grabbing my hand. Marcus, listen to me. When you wake up after this, find me. The me from before the loops. Find me and tell me everything. Maybe I won't remember, but I'll believe you. I'll help you deal with whatever comes next. How will I find you? I don't even know your last name. Chun. Sarah Chin. I work at Powell's Books. I'm there almost every day. She squeezed my hand hard. Find me. Promise. I promise. She pulled me into a brief, fierce hug, and then pushed me toward the chair. Go. Do it. I sat down in the chair, my whole body trembling. The helmet was heavy, covered in electrodes and wiring. I lowered it onto my head and immediately felt a tingling sensation, like mild electric shocks across my scalp. How do I activate it? I called to Sarah. She was reading from the folder. There's a button on the right armrest. When you press it, the interface will engage. Marcus, the procedure says you might experience temporal vertigo and causality disorientation. That sounds bad. Everything about this sounds bad. I found the button, my finger hovering over it. Sarah, The lab door burst open. Security guards flooded in, followed by someone in a lab coat, a Kronos Technologies employee, probably. They were shouting, but I couldn't make out the words over the machine's humming. Do it, Sarah yelled. Now! I pressed the button. The world exploded into light and sensation and time. I was everywhere and everywhere at once. I could see all 47 loops simultaneously, layered on top of each other like transparent film. 47 versions of me waking up at 6:47 a.m. 47 meetings at 2 p.m. 47 coffee mugs shattering at 2:50 p.m. I could see the moment Kronos Technologies activated their machine, creating the loop. I could see myself selected, tagged, anchored. I could feel the weight of being the center point around which reality bent. And I could feel the machine asking me a question, though not in words. More like a fundamental query directed at my consciousness. Do you accept forward-moving causality? Do you release the loop? Every fiber of my being wanted to say yes, to escape, to finally move forward. But I could also feel what would happen if I did. The loop would collapse. All 47 iterations would be erased. The timeline would resume from October 22nd, 2:50 p.m., as if nothing had happened. Except I would remember. I would carry the memory of 47 days of horror and isolation and eventually finding Sarah, only to lose her. And there was something else. Something the procedure hadn't mentioned. I could feel it now, connected to the machine, seeing the full architecture of what Kronos Technologies had built. The loop hadn't been created randomly. It had been created because something catastrophic was supposed to happen at 2:50 p.m. on October 22nd. Something that would have killed thousands of people. The suspicious package in the Cascade building hadn't been a bomb. It had been a temporal anomaly, a crack in space-time caused by Kronos Technologies' earlier experiments. And at 2:50 p.m., that crack was supposed to expand catastrophically, essentially erasing downtown Portland from existence. Kronos had created the loop to prevent that. They'd anchored it to me, trapped me in repetition, condemned me to living nightmare, all to save a city. Do you accept forward-moving causality? The machine asked again, more urgently. If I said yes, the loop would collapse. Time would move forward. But would it move forward to the original catastrophe? Would downtown Portland still be erased? Or had the loop somehow allowed Kronos to fix the problem, to seal the temporal crack? I had no way of knowing. The procedure didn't say. The notes didn't say. I was being asked to take a leap of faith that releasing the loop wouldn't just unleash the original disaster. Through the overwhelming sensory input, I heard Sarah's voice, distant but clear. "Marcus, please! The stability is dropping. If you don't shut it down voluntarily, it's going to collapse anyway." She was right. I could feel it. The loop was fracturing, the timeline coming apart at the seams. Reality was stuttering and glitching not just in small ways now, but fundamentally. The machine couldn't hold it much longer. I had to choose, release the loop now, with some measure of control, or wait for it to shatter catastrophically around me. I accept, I thought to the machine. I released the loop. The response was immediate and overwhelming. I felt something inside me, some connection I hadn't even known existed, suddenly let go. It was like releasing a breath I'd been holding for 47 days, except the breath was time itself. The machine's hum rose to a screaming pitch. The blue light became blinding. And I felt the 47 loops starting to collapse, folding in on themselves, condensing back down toward the single moment from which they'd all emerged. I saw Sarah in the lab, backing away from the machine, her hand over her eyes against the light. I saw the security guards frozen in the doorway. I saw the Kronos Technologies employee with a look of absolute horror on her face. And then I saw the loops collapsing. 47 days of trapped time, all releasing at once, flooding back toward October 22nd, 2:50 p.m. I saw Tom dropping his mug. I saw the woman in the break room dropping hers. I saw Jennifer telling me about her date. I saw Richard's laser pointer dying. I saw the fire alarms, the evacuations, the fixed points repeating and repeating. And then I saw them all compress into a single point of light, a singularity of time, and silence. I opened my eyes. I was still in the chair, the helmet still on my head, but the machine had gone dark. The lab was quiet except for the sound of alarms still blaring in the building hallway. Sarah was standing a few feet away, staring at the machine with wide eyes. The security guards were still in the doorway, frozen. The Kronos employee was on her knees, her face pale. "Did it work?" Sarah asked. Her voice sounded strange, uncertain. "What just happened?" I pulled the helmet off with shaking hands. "You don't remember, do you?" "Remember what?" "I came here with you to investigate, and then you sat down in that chair, and there was this flash of light, and now..." She trailed off, confused. "Wait, why am I here? How did I get here?" "I don't..." She didn't remember. The loop had collapsed, the timeline had been restored, and Sarah Chin had been reset to whoever she was before all this started. She might have a vague sense that something strange had happened tonight, but the 47 loops, the investigation, the version of herself that had understood, all of it was gone. Only I remembered. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky, and looked at the machine. It was completely dark now, inert. Whatever it had done, whatever temporal manipulation it had performed, was over. One of the security guards finally moved, speaking into his radio. "We need backup at the Cascade building, 10th floor. We've got 2 intruders in some kind of situation." The Kronos employee stood up, her face still pale but her voice steady. "Don't touch anything. We need to document all of this. The experiment. God, what have we done? The experiment is over," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "The loop is collapsed. It's finished." She stared at me. "How do you know about the loop? How do you know about any of this? Who are you?" "I'm Marcus Webb," I said. "I'm your anchor point. Or I was. I lived this day 47 times because you used me as the centerpiece of your temporal manipulation experiment without my knowledge or consent." Her face went even paler. That's not possible. The anchor point shouldn't be aware. The entire design was predicated on the anchor being unconscious of the loop." "Well, something went wrong with your design," I said, anger finally breaking through my shock. "Because I remembered everything. Every single loop. 47 days of hell because you needed someone ordinary enough to anchor your machine." More footsteps in the hallway. Police, probably, or maybe more Kronos employees. I needed to figure out what to do next. Should I try to run? Should I stay and tell them everything? Should I? I looked at the clock on the wall. 2:51 p.m. Wait. No, that wasn't right. It had been past 10 p.m. when Sarah and I broke into the building. It had been night. But the clock clearly showed 2:51 p.m., and now that I focused, I could see daylight coming through the frosted windows. "What time is it?" I asked Sarah. She checked her phone, confused. "It's 2:51 p.m. October 22nd. "Why? October 22nd. The loop had collapsed and sent us back to the original day. To the moment right after the temporal intervention. We'd traveled backward in time, or more accurately, we'd snapped back to the point where the loop began. But this wasn't another loop. I could feel it. Time was moving forward now, really forward, 1 second at a time like it was supposed to. The machine was dead. The anchor was released. This was October 22nd, 2:50 p.m., the original day, but a version where Kronos Technologies' temporal loop had just collapsed after 47 iterations. Which meant the temporal crack, I said urgently to the Kronos employee. "The anomaly you were trying to prevent. Is it sealed? Did the loop fix it?" She stared at me, then rushed to a computer terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up readings and data. I need to check the... "Oh God." "What?" I demanded. "What is it?" She turned to look at me, her face a mixture of relief and horror. "The anomaly is gone. Completely sealed. The 47 loop iterations generated enough temporal energy to close the crack. Downtown Portland is safe." She paused. "But the feedback from the collapse created something else. A temporal echo. A person-shaped hole in space-time where the anchor point used to be connected." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. The Kronos employee looked at me with what might have been pity. "It means Marcus Webb technically doesn't exist anymore. Not in any official capacity. When the loop collapsed, it erased his temporal signature from the primary timeline. As far as reality is concerned, he's a ghost. A memory that shouldn't be here." I felt cold spreading through my chest. "I don't exist?" "You exist," she clarified quickly. "You're standing here, you're conscious, you're real. But the universe doesn't have a record of you. No birth certificate, no social security number, no bank accounts, no employment history. The timeline had to sacrifice something to close the anomaly, and it sacrificed the anchor point's connection to normal causality." I sat down hard in the chair again, mind reeling. I'd escaped the loop. I'd saved the city. I'd released myself from being the anchor. And in return, I'd been erased from existence. Not dead. Not trapped. Just erased. A person with memories and consciousness but no past, no identity, no official existence. A ghost in the machine, even after the machine had shut down. Sarah was saying something, asking questions, but I couldn't hear her. All I could think about was the bitter irony of it all. Kronos Technologies had chosen me because I was ordinary. Unremarkable. Alone. No significant connections. Someone who wouldn't be missed. And now I was even more alone than before. A person who literally didn't exist in any meaningful way. I'd escaped the loop, but I'd never escaped what it had made me. A glitch in reality. A man who remembered 47 days that never happened, trapped in a timeline that had no place for him. I started laughing, and I couldn't stop. They kept me in the Kronos Technologies lab for hours. Portland police came and went, confused by the situation and unclear on what laws had actually been broken. Corporate security stood guard at the door. The Kronos employee, her name was Dr. Rebecca Marsh, I eventually learned, made frantic phone calls to people higher up the chain of command while simultaneously trying to document the state of the machine and gather data on the loop collapse. Sarah stayed with me, though I could see the confusion and fear in her eyes. This version of Sarah had no memory of the loops, no understanding of what we'd been through together. To her, she'd apparently followed some stranger into a building for reasons she couldn't quite explain, witnessed something impossible, and now that stranger was claiming to be a ghost in space-time. But she stayed anyway. That had to mean something about who she was, even without the memories. "Marcus," she said quietly while Dr. Marsh was occupied with her phone calls. "I don't remember how I got here, or why I came with you. But I believe that something happened. Something important. And I believe you're not crazy, even though this all sounds completely insane. You helped me escape," I said. "In the loops, you were the only other person who was aware. You investigated, you documented, you figured out what was happening. And when we finally found this place, you helped me shut down the machine." I paused. "None of which you remember, because the loop collapse erased all of that from your timeline. But you remember it." "I remember all of it. Every loop. Every conversation. Every moment." I looked at her. "I remember a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. A version that was brilliant and brave and refused to give up. That version is gone, but you're still you. Underneath everything. The person I knew is still in there somewhere." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Tell me about her. The version of me you knew. What was I like?" So I told her. About how she'd covered her apartment walls in research, mapping the patterns of the loop. About how she'd lost her memories with each reset but kept investigating anyway. About how she'd figured out what Kronos was doing when I was still drowning in despair. About how she'd stood with me in this lab, helping me until the very end, knowing she'd forget everything. Sarah listened with tears streaming down her face. "I wish I could remember," she whispered. "I wish I could remember being that brave." "You are that brave," I said. "You're here now, aren't you? Even though you don't understand what's happening, even though you're scared, you stayed." Before she could respond, Dr. Marsh ended her call and approached us. "Mr. Webb, I've spoken with the executive team. They're sending their legal department and their crisis management team. This is a situation without precedent. You're claiming we used you without consent for illegal temporal experimentation, which, if it could be proven, would be catastrophic for the company." "If it could be proven," I repeated. "But it can't be proven, can it? Because the loops don't exist anymore. They've been erased. I have memories, but memories aren't evidence." Dr. Marsh looked uncomfortable. "The machine has data logs, but they're fragmentary. Corrupted by the collapse. We have evidence that we ran an experiment involving temporal manipulation, yes. But evidence of 47 loop iterations? Evidence that you were used as an unwilling anchor point? That's less clear." "Of course it is." I laughed bitterly. "You erased me from existence, and you erased the evidence of what you did to me. Very convenient. We didn't mean for any of this to happen," Dr. Marsh said, and she actually sounded genuinely distressed. "The loop was created to prevent a catastrophic temporal anomaly. We needed an anchor point to stabilize it. The selection process. Yes, we screened people, we looked for someone who met specific criteria, but we never intended for the anchor to become aware. That was a failure in the system design. A failure that meant I suffered through 47 days of hell while you sat safely outside the loop. I know, and I'm sorry. That's inadequate, I understand that, but I don't know what else to say. Sarah spoke up. What happens to him now? You said he's been erased from the timeline. What does that actually mean? Dr. Marsh pulled up a chair and sat down, looking exhausted. It means that Marcus Webb technically has no legal identity, no documentation. If he tries to access his bank accounts, they won't exist. If he goes to his apartment, there won't be a lease in his name. His employer has no record of him. It's like he never existed in any official capacity. But I'm standing right here, I said. I exist physically. People can see me and interact with me. Yes, because you're real. You're a conscious entity occupying space-time. But you're disconnected from the normal causal chain. You're what we call a temporal echo, a person whose consciousness persisted through a timeline reset but whose official existence was sacrificed in the process. Dr. Marsh rubbed her face tiredly. We've never actually created a temporal echo before. This is all theoretical territory. How do I fix it? I asked. How do I get my identity back? I don't know if you can, she admitted. We need to somehow reintegrate you into the timeline, give you a causal history again. But that would require technology we don't have and don't know how to build. The machine that created the loop is dead. We can't turn it back on, and even if we could, I wouldn't. Not after what it did to you. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Portland. The city I'd saved. The city that had no record of my existence. So what am I supposed to do? I asked quietly. Just wander around as a ghost. No home, no job, no identity? Kronos will help you, Dr. Marsh said quickly. We can provide money, resources, whatever you need. Quietly, through channels that don't require official identification. We can set you up with cash, a place to stay, whatever you need to survive. Hush money, I said flatly. Compensation, she corrected, but we both knew what it really was. They wanted to keep me quiet, keep this whole disaster under wraps. Give me just enough to survive so I wouldn't make noise about what they'd done. And what about fixing me? I demanded, turning to face her. What about researching how to restore my existence? Or are you just going to sweep this under the rug and hope I disappear? We'll research it, Dr. Marsh said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'll personally advocate for dedicating resources to finding a solution. But Marcus, I can't make promises I can't keep. This is uncharted territory. It might not be possible to fix. The security guards shifted uncomfortably by the door. Through the window, I could see the sun starting to set. October 22nd was almost over, the real October 22nd, the one that moved forward, and I had nowhere to go when night fell. Sarah touched my arm gently. You can stay with me, she said. My apartment. I have a couch. It's not much, but I want to help. You don't even know me, I said. Not really. The version of you that knew me is gone. Maybe, Sarah said. But the version of me that exists now is choosing to help. That has to count for something. It did count for something. It counted for everything, actually. In a world where I'd been erased, where I had no official existence, having one person who believed me and was willing to help was more than I had any right to expect. Okay, I said quietly. Thank you. Dr. Marsh made arrangements for what she called preliminary compensation, $10,000 in cash, handed to me in an envelope like something from a crime movie. She gave me her card and made me promise to stay in touch. The police took statements, though they seemed deeply confused about what crime had actually been committed. Eventually, they let us go. Sarah and I took the MAX train back to her apartment in silence. I watched the city slide past the windows, familiar streets that I'd seen 47 times, now strange and new because they were moving forward through time. Every second that passed was a second I'd never lived before. It should have been liberating. Instead, it felt lonely. We reached Sarah's apartment as night fell. When she unlocked her door and flipped on the lights, I stopped in the doorway, staring. The walls were bare. No research, no photographs, no red string connecting clues. Just a normal apartment with normal decorations. This Sarah hadn't spent loops investigating temporal anomalies. She hadn't covered her walls in conspiracy theories. She was just a person living her life. The Sarah I'd known was truly gone. "You okay?" she asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She made up the couch with blankets and a pillow. We ordered takeout, Thai food, which arrived surprisingly quickly. We ate mostly in silence, the TV playing some sitcom neither of us was really watching. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said eventually. "In the loops, when we met, what did we talk about? What was I like?" I thought about it. "You were determined. Relentless. You woke up every loop with no memory of what came before, but you still knew something was wrong. You still investigated. And when we finally met, you didn't waste time being scared or confused. You just acted. You helped me figure out what was happening and how to stop it. I wish I could be that person now," Sarah said softly. "You are that person. You just don't remember being her." I set down my takeout container. "Sarah, you don't owe me anything. I know you feel like you should help because I told you we worked together in the loops, but that's not your responsibility. You can ask me to leave anytime. I'm not going to ask you to leave," she said firmly. "Whatever happened in those loops, whatever version of me existed then, the me that exists now is choosing to help. That's my decision. Not an obligation." We talked more that night. I told her about the loops in more detail, about the patterns and the fixed points and the glitches. She asked questions, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the story I was telling with the complete absence of memory. Around midnight she said, "Do you think the loops really saved the city? Do you think that temporal crack would have destroyed downtown Portland?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Dr. Marsh said it did. The Chronos data showed the anomaly was sealed. But I have no way to verify that. For all I know, the whole thing was a lie. Maybe there was no anomaly. Maybe they just wanted to see if they could create a time loop and I was their test subject. But you don't believe that?" "No," I said slowly. "I felt something when I was connected to the machine. I saw something. A crack in reality, growing, spreading. I think it was real. I think the loops did save thousands of lives." I paused. I just wish they'd asked me first. Given me a choice instead of deciding I was expendable. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "For what it's worth, I don't think you're expendable. And I don't think the version of me in the loops thought you were either. We fought our way to that lab together. We shut down the machine together. That means something. It means something to me," I said. "But only to me. You don't remember it. Then tell me about it," Sarah said. "Tell me everything. Every loop, every conversation, every moment. If I can't remember, at least I can know. I can carry the story even if I can't carry the memory." So I told her. I talked through the night, describing all 47 loops in as much detail as I could remember. The variations, the glitches, the terror of waking up at 6:47 a.m. knowing I was trapped. The lottery ticket that should have been proof. The way reality stuttered and struggled to maintain coherence. And I told her about loop 30-something, when I'd met her for the first time. How she'd recognized me. How she'd known about the loop. How we'd stood together in her apartment, this apartment, looking at walls covered in research that no longer existed. Sarah listened to all of it, asking questions occasionally, taking notes on her phone. By the time I finished, dawn was breaking through her windows. "It's October 23rd, Sarah said, checking the time. "A day you've never lived before." She was right. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was experiencing a new day. Time was moving forward. The loop was broken. But I felt hollow. Empty. The fight was over, and I'd won, but the cost was everything. My identity, my existence, my connection to normal reality. The only person who understood what I'd been through didn't remember any of it. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "Long term, I mean. You can stay here as long as you need, but eventually you'll need a plan." "I don't know," I admitted. "I have no identity, no way to work legally, no official existence. I guess I just survive. Take Kronos' hush money and try to build some kind of life as a ghost." "That's not a life," Sarah said firmly. "That's just existing. What else is there? I can't get my identity back. Dr. Marsh said it might not be possible." Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "What if we try anyway? What if we research it ourselves? I work at Powell's, I have access to thousands of books. You have memories of experiencing temporal manipulation firsthand. Between us, maybe we can figure out something Kronos missed." "Sarah, that's incredibly optimistic." "So? Someone has to be optimistic." She smiled, and for just a moment I could see the Sarah from the loops, determined, relentless, refusing to give up. "Besides, I don't have any memories of fighting through 47 time loops with you, but you do. And if that version of me was brave enough to face down broken reality, the least I can do is help you figure out how to exist in it." I felt something in my chest loosen slightly. Not hope, exactly. But maybe the possibility of hope. The idea that this didn't have to be the end. That maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to be real again. "Okay," I said. "Let's try." We spent the next few weeks researching. Sarah pulled books on quantum mechanics, temporal physics, consciousness studies, anything that might give us insight into how to reintegrate a temporal echo into normal causality. I spent my days at Powell's, reading in quiet corners, trying to understand the science behind what had happened to me. Dr. Marsh checked in occasionally, calling a burner phone she'd given me. Kronos was still researching the problem, but I could tell from her tone that it wasn't a priority. They'd saved the city, closed the temporal crack, and now they were focused on covering up the experiment. I was a loose end they were willing to fund but not willing to fix. I started noticing strange things about being a temporal echo. Sometimes people would look right through me, as if I wasn't there. Cameras occasionally failed to capture my image. Digital records would sometimes forget I'd interacted with them. It was like reality itself wasn't quite sure I existed and kept forgetting to include me. But Sarah always saw me. Sarah always remembered. She became my anchor to reality in a way that Kronos' machine never had been. When the world forgot I existed, Sarah proved I was real. On November 15th, nearly a month after the loop collapse, we were in Sarah's apartment surrounded by books and research papers when she suddenly sat up straight. "Marcus, I found something." I looked up from the quantum mechanics textbook I'd been struggling through. "What?" She showed me her laptop screen, displaying an obscure academic paper about consciousness and temporal mechanics. This physicist, Dr. Elena Vasquez, published a paper 3 years ago about theoretical temporal echoes. She predicted they could exist if certain conditions were met during a timeline reset. Does she say how to fix them? Not exactly, Sarah admitted. But she's at MIT. She's a real researcher studying this exact problem. If anyone would have ideas about how to reintegrate you into the timeline, it would be her. MIT is on the other side of the country, I pointed out. And I can't exactly fly. I don't have ID, remember? Can't get through airport security. So we drive, Sarah said simply. Or take a bus. Or hitchhike if we have to. Marcus, this is the first real lead we've found. We have to follow it. I stared at her. You'd come with me? Across the country? Of course I would. You think I'm letting you do this alone? She smiled. Besides, I took a leave of absence from work. I told them I needed time to deal with a personal crisis, which is technically true. I'm free for the next 2 months. Sarah, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. She interrupted. I want to. The version of me from the loops helped you escape. The version of me that exists now is going to help you come back. Deal with it. I felt something dangerously close to tears. Why are you doing this? Really? You don't remember what we went through together? No, I don't remember it, Sarah said. But you told me about it. You told me that version of me was brave and determined and refused to give up. Well, those things are still true about me. Maybe I can't remember being her, but I can choose to be like her. I can choose to help you. She paused, then added quietly. And honestly, ever since that day at Kronos, I've felt like something is missing. Like there's a hole in my memory, a version of myself that existed and then vanished. Helping you feels like the closest I can get to finding her again. Okay, I said, my voice rough. Okay. Let's go to MIT. We left Portland a week later, taking a Greyhound bus across the country because it was cheap and didn't require ID for me. The journey took days, watching America slide past the windows in a blur of landscapes and small towns. I'd never been outside Portland before the loops. Never had a reason to leave, nowhere to go. Now I was traveling across the entire country with someone who'd chosen to believe in me even without memories to back it up. Maybe that was worth being a temporal echo. Maybe that was worth everything I'd lost. We reached Boston in early December, the city cold and covered in early snow. MIT's campus was intimidating, brilliant students and world-class researchers everywhere, and me with no credentials, no identity, no right to be there. But Sarah talked our way into a meeting with Dr. Vasquez, claiming we had information about a real-world temporal anomaly. To my surprise, Dr. Vasquez agreed to see us. Her office was cluttered with papers and equations scrawled on whiteboards. She was in her 50s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You're a temporal echo," she said the moment I walked in. Not a question. A statement. "How can you tell?" I asked. "Because I study them. I've been theorizing about them for years, but I've never actually met one." She gestured for us to sit. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the loops, about being used as an anchor point, about the collapse that erased my existence. Sarah filled in details about the Kronos Technologies lab and the machine. Dr. Vasquez listened intently, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "The fact that you exist at all is remarkable," she finally said. "By all rights, when the loop collapsed, you should have been erased completely. The fact that your consciousness persisted suggests something unique about you, some quality that allowed you to survive a timeline reset. Can you fix it?" Sarah asked. "Can you reintegrate him into normal causality?" Dr. Vasquez hesitated. "Theoretically? Maybe. But it would require technology that doesn't exist yet. We'd need to somehow write him back into the timeline, create a causal history for him that reality would accept. I've been working on equations for how that might be possible, but actually building the technology." She shook her head. "That's years away. Maybe decades." My heart sank. "So there's nothing you can do?" "I didn't say that." Dr. Vasquez pulled out a folder from her desk. "I can't restore your original identity. That's gone, sacrificed in the loop collapse. But I might be able to give you a new one." "What do you mean?" "I have contacts in certain, unofficial channels. People who can create documentation for individuals who need to exist off the books. If I provide them with your physical information and a cover story, they can generate a new identity for you. New name, new social security number, new birth certificate. It won't be your original life, but it will be a life. A way to exist in the world legally." "That's illegal," Sarah said. "Extremely," Dr. Vasquez agreed. "But given what Kronos Technologies did to you, I think we can make an ethical exception. The question is, do you want a new identity? Or do you want to keep hoping your original existence can be restored?" I thought about it. My old life, Marcus Webb, insurance analyst, lonely and predictable and ordinary, was gone. The person I'd been before the loops no longer existed in any meaningful way. And honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted him back. That Marcus had been chosen because he was forgettable, expendable. Maybe it was time to be someone else. Someone who wasn't expendable. I want a new identity, I said. I want to exist again. Dr. Vasquez nodded. It'll take a few weeks to arrange. You'll need to stay in Boston until then. Do you have somewhere you can stay? They can stay with me, someone said from the doorway. We turned. A young man stood there, grad student, probably, based on his age and the MIT hoodie he wore. He was looking at me with an expression of wonder and recognition. I'm sorry, he said. I was walking past and heard some of what you said. About the time loops. About being trapped. He stepped into the office. My name is David Chen. And I think I was supposed to die on October 22nd. We all stared at him. What are you talking about? Dr. Vasquez asked. David pulled out his phone, showing us a calendar. I had a meeting in downtown Portland on October 22nd, 2:30 p.m. at the Cascade Building. I was supposed to be there for a job interview with a company on the 10th floor. But that morning, I woke up feeling inexplicably anxious. Like something was deeply wrong. I almost didn't go, but I forced myself to get on the plane. He paused. Then halfway through my flight from Boston to Portland, the anxiety got so bad I had a panic attack. Made them turn the plane around. I never made it to Portland that day. Never made it to the Cascade Building. And I've felt guilty about it ever since, like I missed something important. Like I was supposed to be there. The temporal crack, I said slowly. If it had expanded, if the loop hadn't stopped it, you would have been right in the blast zone. How many others? Sarah asked. How many people were supposed to die that day and didn't because the loops prevented it? Thousands, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. If what you're telling me is true, if Kronos really did seal a major temporal anomaly, then thousands of people are alive right now who would have died. They just don't know it. David looked at me with tears in his eyes. You saved my life. You saved all of us. And Kronos erased you for it. I didn't do it on purpose, I said. I was just trying to escape. Doesn't matter, David said. You did it anyway. And now I'm going to help you. You can stay at my apartment as long as you need. Whatever you need, I'll help. It's the least I can do. Over the next few weeks, I stayed with David while Dr. Vasquez arranged my new identity. Sarah stayed too, sleeping on David's couch while I took the floor. We talked late into the night, the three of us, discussing time and causality and what it meant to exist. David told us about his life, his research, his dreams. He'd come to MIT to study physics, hoping to understand the universe. Now he was living with someone who'd experienced things that physics couldn't fully explain. You're proof, David said one night. Proof that time can be manipulated. That consciousness can persist through timeline resets. You're living evidence of everything physics has been theorizing about for decades. I'm also evidence that people will sacrifice you without consent if it's convenient, I said bitterly. That too, David acknowledged. But maybe you can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Maybe you can tell your story, warn people about the dangers of temporal manipulation. Who would believe me? I have no proof. The loops are gone. The evidence is erased. You have me, Sarah said. I don't remember the loops, but I believe you. And I'll tell people I believe you. And you have me, David added. I was supposed to die, and I didn't. That has to mean something. On December 21st, Dr. Vasquez called me into her office and handed me an envelope. Your new identity, she said. All the documentation you need to exist legally. Birth certificate, social security card, driver's license. A complete history that will hold up to most background checks. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a driver's license with my photo. The name read, Marcus Chen. I looked up at David, who smiled. I talked to Dr. Vasquez. If you want to use my last name, you can. Legally, we can say you're my cousin. It'll give your identity more depth, more connections, more reality. You'd do that? I asked. You barely know me. I know you saved my life. David said. And I know you need help. Family is supposed to help each other. So, family? I felt tears running down my face. Family. Sarah was crying too. You have a name again, she said. You exist again. She was right. I had a new name, a new identity, a new connection to the world. I wasn't the old Marcus Webb. That person was gone forever. But I was someone. I existed. Reality acknowledged me again. It wasn't the same as getting my old life back. But maybe it was better. Maybe it was a chance to be someone new. Someone who wasn't alone. Someone who had people who believed in him. 𝒏𝒄𝒆. A temporal echo who'd found his way back to reality. It took another month to settle into my new identity. David helped me open a bank account, get a job, working at a bookstore, appropriately enough, find a small apartment. Sarah stayed in Boston, finding her own job at a local bookshop, building a life near mine. We never talked about whether our relationship was romantic or just a deep bond of shared trauma. It didn't matter. She was there, and I was there, and we both understood what it meant to lose and find yourself. Dr. Vasquez continued her research on temporal mechanics, with me as an informal consultant. I told her everything I remembered about being connected to the Kronos machine, every sensation and insight. She filled notebooks with my descriptions, building theories about how consciousness interacts with time. Someday, she told me, we'll understand this well enough to prevent it from happening to anyone else. We'll create safeguards, ethical guidelines. Your suffering won't be meaningless. I wanted to believe her. On October 22nd of the following year, I stood outside the Cascade building with Sarah and David. A small memorial had been placed there, not for anything official, but by us. A plaque we'd installed ourselves that read, "In memory of the day that never was, and the people who survived it without knowing." Do you think about it every day? Sarah asked. The loops? Every single day, I admitted. Sometimes I wake up at 6:47 a.m. and panic, thinking it's starting again. Sometimes I see someone drop a coffee mug and my heart stops. The loops are gone, but they're still with me. They're part of you now, David said. Part of your story. My story, I repeated. The story of Marcus Webb, who became 𝒏𝒄𝒆, who lived 47 days that never happened, who saved a city without meaning to, who died and came back as someone new. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't even the life I'd had before. But it was mine, and I was learning to live it. Sarah took my hand. Come on, let's get coffee. Not at 2:50 p.m. though, I said, and she laughed, understanding. We walked away from the Cascade building, three people bound together by time and trauma and choice. The city moved around us, thousands of people going about their days, unaware of how close they'd come to not existing, unaware of the loops that had saved them. Only I knew. Only I remembered. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that was enough. I was 𝒏𝒄𝒆 now. A glitch in the matrix who'd found his way back to reality. A temporal echo who'd learned to exist again. The loop was broken. Time moved forward. And for the first time in a long time, I moved forward with it. Not back to who I'd been, but toward who I was becoming. And that, finally, was enough.